For most of human history, there were no love songs on the radio, no roses on anniversaries, no wedding rings, no slow dances, no handwritten letters signed yours forever, no phones to text someone you missed, and yet, somehow, your ancestors still lay awake thinking about one particular person, felt their pulse quicken when a certain face appeared across the fire, and grieved for years when that person was gone, which raises a haunting question. What were our ancestors actually feeling when they looked at each other like that? I don't mean the basic drive to reproduce, that part is obvious. The real question is whether something deeper was running through their minds, something less like instinct and more like being consumed. Because if you could crouch beside them at that fire 40,000 years ago and watch how one person's eyes kept finding one other face and no one else's in a firelit crowd of 30, you might realize they were feeling something far more familiar than you'd expect. Because here's the thing that makes this question so strange. We tend to imagine our prehistoric ancestors as cold, brutal, purely survival-driven. Grunting, hunting, reproducing out of instinct, the way animals do. Cavemen, not lovers. But if you strip away the Hollywood image and actually look at the archaeological record, the neuroscience, and what we know about the human brain, a very different picture starts to form. So let's get into it. Did cavemen actually feel love? The real thing? The aching, obsessive, can't stop thinking about you kind of love? Or is that a modern invention, something poets and pop songs made up long after our ancestors were gone? Let's start with the brain itself, because that's really where this question gets answered. In the early 2000s, biological anthropologist Helen Fisher and her team ran something wild. They took people who had just fallen madly in love, the kind of new relationship where you can't focus on anything else, and put them inside an MRI machine. Then they showed them a photo of the person they loved. What lit up wasn't some poetic, abstract heart region. It was the ventral tegmental area, a small, ancient cluster of neurons buried deep in the brainstem, packed with dopamine and wired straight into the reward system. This is some of the oldest real estate in the mammalian brain. It's the same machinery that lights up during a cocaine high. And that's the twist. Love isn't some sophisticated cultural invention layered on top of a rational mind. It's older than language, older than tools, older than fire. Here's why that matters so much for your ancestors. If romantic love runs through some of the deepest, most ancient parts of the brain, that means it wasn't invented in a Renaissance poem or a Hollywood script. It was already running in the skulls of people crouched around fires 40,000 years before Shakespeare picked up a pen. Your caveman ancestor, watching someone across the flames and feeling their pulse quicken, wasn't performing some borrowed modern emotion. He was feeling the exact same neurochemical event you feel today. Now, why would evolution bother building something this intense in the first place? This is where things get real. Human babies are, honestly, kind of a disaster. A baby zebra can run from a lion within hours of being born. A human baby can't even support its own head for months. Our children take over a decade to become anything close to independent, and during that entire stretch, they need constant food, protection, and teaching. That is an enormous burden for one person to carry alone in a world full of predators, famine, and disease. So researchers studying pair bonding argue that romantic love may function as what they call a commitment device, an evolved emotional trick designed to keep two exhausted, overwhelmed parents locked together long enough to actually raise a child to survival age. Love, in other words, isn't just poetry. It's biology's way of stopping two people from walking away from each other while there's a screaming infant that needs both of them. But here's where it gets even stranger. Because some anthropologists think this whole system might have started somewhere unexpected. One recent hypothesis, from a researcher at the University of Texas, suggests that human romantic pair bonding may have actually evolved out of same-sex bonding behavior already present in the common ancestor we share with chimpanzees, not from the traditional mother-infant bond theory most people assume. It's still debated. Nobody has this fully settled, but it tells you something important. The origin story of love is way messier and way older than most people realize. So, if cavemen had this hardware running in their brains this whole time, is there any actual proof they used it? Turns out, yes, and the proof isn't hiding in some dusty theory. It's buried in the ground. In a cave in Mantua, Italy, archaeologists uncovered a Neolithic grave with two skeletons, a man and a woman, face to face, arms and legs wound around each other. exactly as they were when they were lowered into the earth roughly 6,000 years ago. Whoever buried them didn't just place them side by side. They arranged two bodies into a single shape. In the Diros caves in Greece, archaeologists found something even older. A couple buried curled together like they'd fallen asleep mid-conversation. In Iran, at a site called Hasanlu, two more skeletons were found locked in an embrace, frozen at what was clearly the worst moment of their lives. And going back much further, at Sungir in Russia, a site over 30,000 years old, archaeologists found a burial so elaborate it stunned the entire field. Two children laid head to head, covered in thousands of hand-carved beads that would have taken months, maybe years, to make. Nobody does that for a body they don't care about. Think about what that actually means. Someone knelt beside a body in the dirt, thousands of years before writing existed, before religion as we'd recognize it, before anyone had a word for romance, and made a decision. Not to bury this person quickly and move on, but to arrange their arms, to curl their knees just so, to place beads, one at a time, around a body that could no longer feel them. That is an instinct. Instinct doesn't spend hours on a detail no one alive will ever benefit from. That's grief. That's someone trying to hold on to a shape they were about to lose forever. And that's really the answer to the question this whole video started with. Cavemen weren't just surviving next to each other. They were losing their minds over each other, staying up at night over each other, grieving for years over each other, exactly the way you have or will. The dopamine hit, jealousy, the obsession, the ache when someone doesn't text back. All of it is running on hardware that was already fully built before humans ever left Africa. You didn't inherit love from Shakespeare or Hollywood. You inherited it from someone who once knelt in the dirt and couldn't let go. So the next time you feel that stupid, overwhelming pull toward one specific person in a room full of people, know that you're not malfunctioning. And you're not being dramatic. You're doing exactly what your ancestors did around a fire 40,000 years ago. The technology changed. The bedrooms, the phones, the wedding rings, all of that is new. But the feeling underneath it is some of the oldest software the human brain has ever run.